Unmuting you, I'll unmute afterwards.
Okay.
Good morning, Malay.
Dear sir, shall we start?
Yes, Satyamurthy, we can start.
Yes. Okay.
Just you can confirm with the speaker. Padmini?
She's available, sir.
Okay. Satyamurthy, we can start.
Yes. Okay, sir. Thank you. Dear Saravanan sir.
Yeah, we are ready.
Yes. Good morning, dear participants and the well-wishers of this university. On behalf of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Educational Research Institute, Faculty of General and Adult and Yoga, Coimbatore Campus, Tamil Nadu, India, I welcome you all for this Day 2 session of International Webinar Series on Inclusive Adapted Physical Education. It was a wonderful day yesterday. Hope this day also will be fruitful for you all. At the outset, to seek the blessings of the Almighty, I invite our Bhagavadar Anna, Mr. Amarnath, to sing the prayer song.
மன்னகம் வாழ வந்த அண்ணல் விவேகானந்த பொன்னடி போற்றுவோம் நாம். என்னரும் தவப்பயனாய் மண்ணுயிர் கழித்த வள்ளல் தின்னரும் ராஜயோகி பொன்னடி போற்றுவோம் நாம். மன்னகம் வாழ வந்த அண்ணல் விவேகானந்த பொன்னடி போற்றுவோம் நாம். பரமஹம்ச தேவ அருஞான சேயவன் தருமமே வடிவாய் தோன்றிய தூயவன் தெருள் நிறையாதவன் தீனத்து தாயவன் தோயவன் மன்னகம் வாழ வந்த அண்ணல் விவேகானந்த பொன்னடி போற்றுவோம் நாம். பொன்னடி போற்றுவோம் நாம், பொன்னடி போற்றுவோம் நாம். ஜெய் ஸ்ரீ சுவாமிஜி மகாராஜி கி ஜெய்.
Thank you, Anna. So it was a well beginning. Now, I humbly request Dr. R. Giridharan sir, Head of the Department, Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Education Research Institute, Faculty of General and Religion Yoga, to deliver his welcome note. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Satyamurthy. First, my humble pranams to Revered Swami Garishnanandaji Maharaj, Administrative Head, Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Educational and Research Institute, Coimbatore campus. And he also is Secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Vidyalaya, Coimbatore. Next, Revered Brahmachari Ajara Chaitanya Maharaj, Administrative Head, Assistant Administrative Head of RKMVERI, Coimbatore campus. Most respected Dr. M. Mutayana, Dean, School of Rehabilitation Science and Physical Education. And today's expert, most respected Dr. Linda Hilgenbrink, and most respected Dr. Susna Okan Dillon, and most respected Sri Padmini Shenapraglada, and respected staff members of GAPI faculty, and students and distinguished attendees, a very good morning to one and all. It fills my heart with immense pleasure to welcome you all on the behalf of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Educational Research Institute, Faculty of General and Adapted Physical Education and Yoga, for this international webinar, first series on the topic Inclusive Adapted Physical Education, on this today's day 2 session of Dr. Linda. Inclusion cannot be accomplished solely by simply adding para-educators or special educators, or by adaptation of games or equipment or time or organizations. It requires more of technical and strategies. That is what this today's session has comes up. The number of sporting events available to the students with the persons with the disabilities has grown, and the nature of the competition has also been improved. So there has been an increasing number of and the range of competition being increased, mainly with the result of more technical inputs and a qualified coaches and the teachers and the technicians. It's all pulled together to bring the expertise, knowledge being shared so that the inclusion can be possible, because the many feels that they have a challenges. It requires the use of techniques and strategies based on the new assumptions and representing a community culture in physical education, in addition to the application of more traditional approaches. The ultimate goal of any movement is to help the people with disabilities to participate as a productive and a respected member in the society at large, by giving them the fair opportunities to develop and demonstrate their skills and talents through sports training and competition. It is all a goal from the many sports organizations that too we have. By increasing the public awareness of the children with the disabilities, their abilities and the needs. With this in keeping in mind and the possibilities of an inclusive setup, it requires more techniques and strategies that to be based on the new assumptions and representing a community culture in physical education. So we are happy that we have created an opportunity for a thorough knowledge about the adapted physical education in the classroom setting. the classroom strategies in the inclusive setting. So we are also happy that you all people are actively participated in the last session, and we hope we are all going to have the same similar on this particular plenary session. With this immense pleasure and happiness, today I would like to extend my warm welcome to Dr. Linda Hilgenbrink, Adapted Physical Education Specialist, Denton Independent School Districts, Texas, USA, who has a vast experience in the field of adapted physical education and adapted physical activity. I too impressed by these words. In her motto is, she has mentioned, I strive to enable and engage my student to arrive at their best functional ability, that is to be a physically educated, active individual. She has dedicated her life to the children with the disabilities. With all this expertise, you all will come to know more about her in the introduction of the speaker. With this, I once again welcome Dr. Linda Hilgenbrink, and I also welcome all the faculty members of GAPI and the students who are students and the attendees of this second day session. I once again welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon sir, for your brief and excellent welcome note.
Thank you.
Now, introduction of the speaker. So today's speaker is Dr. Linda Hilgenbrink, Adapted Physical Education Specialist, Denton Independent School District, Texas, USA. A brief report about the ma'am. Ma'am is a vast experienced She is a certified adapted physical education escape from 2016, and also to add further, since our university's background stands on Special Olympics, she is also an excellent coach, athletics coach certified in Special Olympics, and also from 2016 onwards, Special Olympics Texas MATP program certified. And to highlight her public service, she is one of the topmost public service in USA in the Denton, Texas. To highlight it, there are many events to highlight physical activity profile of independence for individuals with severe and profound impairments. Peer review of APE assessment tool on 2014. On 2010, Special Olympics bocce and softball competition, Flower Mount, Texas softball umpire. 2008-2005 between Lady Mavericks wheelchair basketball tournaments, Dallas, Texas volunteer. In 2000, National Veterans Wheelchair Games, San Antonio, Texas volunteer. 1993, Michigan Special Olympics State Games clinician. There are many services, but these are the highlights about the ma'am. To talk about Madam's laurels, Texas Effort Honor Award 2019, and Texas Women's University Distinguished Alumni 2015, NASA Mission 10, Train Like an Astronaut, Health and Fitness, PE Week Invitee 2013, Johnson Space Center, Houston, Texas, and National Adapted Physical Education Teacher of the Year, APHERT 2012, Southern District APHERT Adapted Physical Education Teacher of the Year 2012, Texas APHERT Adapted Physical Education Teacher of the Year 2012. And talking about her research publications, the vast areas, I'm just giving you the brief statistics. Articles, refereed journals 33, presentations and scholarly articles 121, funded projects 35. And there are many more, but due to time, I'm just giving you the brief. So this is the introduction of our speaker, Dr. Linda Hegenbrink. May I now request Dr. Linda Hegenbrink to have a session. Dr. Linda, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. She can unmute herself. Yeah.
Yes, madam, welcome to the series. The session is waiting for you. Please.
Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Good morning from Lake Dallas, Texas, in the United States. I want to thank you for that introduction and to Dr. Gira Hanran. I'm sorry about not saying your name correctly. I'm so sorry.
Giridharan? Yeah.
Dr. Giridharan.
Thank you. And to Ms. Shri Padmini, and to the hosting university and administration, to the general adaptive physical education and yoga faculty members, thank you so very much for the invitation to speak with you today. If there are any therapists or parents or any individuals with disabilities, they're in attendance, thank you for coming. It is an absolute honor to take part in this webinar series. I'd like to congratulate my friend and colleague, Dr. Susanna Dillon, on the rich, informative presentation that she shared with all of us yesterday. I'd also like to wish in advance Ms. Shri Padmini best wishes for her presentation tomorrow. To all of the university individuals, the adaptive physical education and sports program events that were displayed in the video montage was very exciting to me and was actually quite moving for me to watch because I certainly felt that it was a beautiful display of all that you've accomplished and yet you know that you have vision for where you want to take things in the future. So it's my wish for all of you to have continued blessings on all of your efforts. For those of you who were in the session with Dr. Dillon, my style of presenting is a little bit different. I'm no longer in higher ed. I am a practitioner. I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher at heart. And I have a wide array of teaching career experiences that have informed my craft of teaching, and I'd like to share some of those with you. My first teaching job was a physical education teacher and coach at a residential state school for the deaf. And so I am a person who is quite comfortable with using American Sign Language to communicate with individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. And in fact, part of my assignment in the school district is that we have the Regional Day School for the Deaf in Denton, and we have students who come from different distances into our district, and we have 4 campuses that those children, or students, articulate through. And I have 3 out of the 4 campuses so that if needed and if they're on my caseload, I can use my skill set of signing to be able to communicate with those students. And using sign language is not necessarily just for deaf students. Many other types of students are students with many other types of disabling conditions benefit from the use of sign language. I've taught at a residential treatment facility for students with emotional and behavioral disabilities, as well as worked at a locked facility for youth. We would use the term as youth who are incarcerated. I volunteered in part of my PhD work at a men's federal prison. And while I was there, the men who were needing to have their mobility needs met by the use of a wheelchair, we introduced them to the sport of wheelchair basketball. And later on, because in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's a strong disability sport group with many different types of wheelchair basketball teams, we were able to convince the administration of the prison to teach the inmates wheelchair basketball. And And we actually put on a game where we had athletes, wheelchair athletes, come into the prison, and the game was very well received. Of course, I'm going to make a little bit of a joke here. We had a captured audience, but the gym was full, and there was true excitement for what was unfolding. And I'm just so very pleased of, I dedicated 1.5 years of volunteering to doing that. And I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to bring wheelchair basketball into the most restricted environment that we have, perhaps anywhere in our nation or world, and that's into a prison. I've coached women's softball and basketball at the college level. Sometimes it's hard for me to turn off those skills. I have a critical eye for what the performances of skills, perhaps based upon these backgrounds. And finally, I was a faculty member in higher education, and I taught adapted physical education to undergrad and graduate level students. So I'm very honored today to have so many students in the session, as well as supported by their faculty members. I share all these experiences with you, not to be braggadocious, not to put out there that I've done all these things, but I wanted to share them because they've shaped me personally, and they've shaped, of course, and my teaching approaches, so all of these things wrapped up into one, I think, is something that all of you as young students and or faculty members, we pull from all of our experiences, and those experiences can create and make for us to become a very rich, dedicated teacher. And as I know, the faculty there are helping mold you into that, and to have productive lives after you finish your degrees. This presentation may contain ideas or images that are recognized or practiced in my area of the United States, yet may not be recognized or practiced in your area or country. Nevertheless, it's my intention that the shared content be meaningful, helpful, of course, extend your thoughts, your approaches, and efforts when working with students with disabilities, or as physical education teachers and any of the students that we are faced with trying to help become the best movers that they can be. If the information assists you, or you're able to take away something that you feel you can use, then I will consider today's session part of a successful day. This presentation is organized by request of particular content, specific information, particularly inclusionary strategies in physical education. I have tried to place as many visual images to emphasize concepts, and I've also contributed at the very end of the presentation. I've provided you with additional resources to tap into. References are provided throughout the presentation, and the photos that you're going to see are mine and that I've accumulated across my career, and it is with permission that I'm able to use these images. I thought it might be beneficial to first, let's see, I think I need to move my slide. Bear with me. I thought I would provide a district snapshot of adapted physical education services in our district, and you can see the size of our district. We have just shy of, oops, where's my slide? Pardon me. We have 30,000+ students. It's for Texas. It's not a small district, but it's also not a large district. And we have a total of 42 campuses, and we're still building more. Denton School District is one of the fastest growing school districts in North Texas. The entire population of the city of Denton, you can see there, is over 142,000 and growing. And as a district, they strive to meet inclusive best practices. I am one of 4 adapted physical education specialists, and out of the 42 campuses that we have, all of us, each one of us serve a high school. We have multiple middle schools and multiple elementary campuses, and 2 of us have early childhood centers or campuses. All of us are graduates of Texas Women's University. All of us are CAPE certified, meaning that we have successfully passed the Adapted Physical Education national standards by either exam or certifying processes. Our student caseload numbers roughly range, although these fluctuate from year to year, they range from 35 to 45 students on our caseload. Our primary deliveries, focused service delivery, is a one-on-one approach to students and small group. And we say that if you have your group larger than 5, then it's really difficult as adapted PE specialists to truly focus on the individual students and their needs. We like to keep our groups smaller. Now, in our middle schools and our high schools, we have something called Partner PE. This is a inclusionary program where students with disabilities and general education peers come together when appropriate and as appropriate, and they engage in a physical education class. And then we also use some consultative models or a consultative model as appropriate. So that's kind of the snapshot of the district. I think we have a lot in common because in my career, I've taught in a lot of different places. Most of the time I teach in very small confined areas. I find those almost a wonderful way, if you will, or a nice way to be able to control student behaviors because I've reduced the size of the area that I'm teaching in is reduced automatically. So I frequently teach in hallways, and you can see a variety of other places that any 4 of us there or even others in the district and across the nation would tell you that sometimes we just find the space that we possibly can find to have our sessions. And what you'll see on the list down at the very bottom, I say what's missing. A gymnasium, a formal gymnasium. When you go out into the world as an adapted physical education specialist, you have to approach every campus that you go into as you are the visitor and a visitor on that campus. And the administrators are there to, of course, oversee all of their staff. So here we come in to try to provide services for kids. And it's not very common that we have gym access. But it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we ask about availability of the gym. And to find out when we can get those students in a gym. And why is it important perhaps to have a gymnasium to go into if where you're teaching has one, is that we want to expose our students with disabilities to that same setting. One, they have the legal aspect of getting them into that facility or that room. They have a right to be there. They have a right to be there alongside with their typically developing peers. And 2, though, we want to expose them so that we can reduce the fear that they may have for the setting. And we want them to know that when in time that they can, if they can make return trips to with their class to attend physical education class in the gym, then we want them to be able to do that and do it without a bunch of behaviors going on and have a positive experience for the student. The equipment that you're going to see in the presentation is largely mine. I'm always on the lookout for that novel piece, that unique aspect. And I also use a lot of traditional-based pieces of equipment too. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into some of the more of the inclusionary topics that we're going to cover. The type of adapted PE session format that I follow, I want to emulate, if you will, or copy and be consistent with what they're doing within our general physical education teachers. And so I break that down into basically 4 parts. I want to immediately get my kids, get them up and moving. That first instant activity that we can, it's time, I've arrived, I've picked up my student, and I want them to, it's time to move with Dr. Linda. So usually, just as a basic thing, we either walk or run. It depends on the skill of the student. But, and like I said, I do a lot of teaching in hallways. So we'll run the length of a hallway and come back and do that a few times, depending on what the students' capabilities are. I also focus on, of course, this is for elementary students, locomotor skill patterns. We'll do some exercises because those are what they're doing in their general PE class. I'm going to parallel what they're doing in their general PE class. I'm going to select exercises that are total body coordination and doing a traditional jumping jack or what we call a windmill, and others are things that our kids need to do. They need to be able to learn how to do that. And depending on the age of the student, though, those exercises might change. Of course, then the main focus of the lesson is tied to the goals and objectives of their individualized education program. And in all the different variety of ways that I have to do that, to hold that student's attention, to challenge them, to motivate them, all of those different ways. At the end of the session, I work on cool down. Now, the cool down can mean a lot of different things, but one, I'm teaching in the affective learning domain to help when I say to my students, okay, we're closing out, maybe we've counted down, we've done all the repetitions we need to do, it's time to clean up. And you're going to help Dr. Linda because you're going to help me take care of the equipment. Let's take good care of the equipment. And then we're going to start talking about the things that you liked about the session or didn't like. And sometimes, I know that the focus of yoga in your country is extremely high, and I don't consider myself a person who does yoga very well, but I do enjoy, as a closure activity, performing yoga with my students. When I go out the door, I have something that I call the out the door closure, and that's a review of the lesson content. And it doesn't matter to me what the cognitive ability is of the student. I will, if they can understand the question, great. If they can respond back to me, wonderful. But what I mean by out the door closure is I'm going to review what we did. So I'll say to them, what did we do first? And if the student can respond, oh, we ran. Yes, we did. We ran. And I might tell them how many times they ran up and down the hallway. What else did we do next? Did you do jumping jacks? What did you do? And I want them to try to verbalize. I'm working on language with them at this point as well, doing some cross-curricular aspects, with them as I review what we did in the session. And then we'll also, when it gets down to the goals, you had a goal of working on, let's just say, shooting a ball at a wall target. And how do you remember, how did we hold our hands when we did that? And I'll demonstrate, and we might perhaps review what the cues were that we did. I call this windows. Because if we're catching a ball, we've made that window with our hands, and a true definition of catch is catching it with the hands only and not bobbling it and trapping the ball to your body. So I use the term or cues windows. And then if we're catching the ball low, we of course put our little pinkies together and we make baskets. And so if I'm in this session with this lesson, if I use those terms, I'm going to remind that student on the out of the door closure as a review of the lesson, these are the things we worked on. The final thing that I'll do with the student is to ask them, what did you like the best? What did you like doing? What was your favorite? Usually I'll get a reply. On occasion, if a student has had a bad day, I will tell them, I will ask them, what is it that you didn't like? Why did you get upset? Or why did you behave in this way? And if they can tell me, then that's that interaction between the student and I. And then I'll say, okay, well, next time, I'll see you next time, and we'll work on your goals again. But thank you for your session. I always tell my students, thank you for your session today. Thank you for your hard work. So that's kind of where I teach and how I break down my sessions. So I just wanted to share those aspects with you to kind of give you a sense of where I'm coming from my career background and what kind of forms my teaching approach, as well as what my day-to-day types of things might look like. The next part of this presentation is the kind of the nuts and bolts of my being invited to come today. So we've gone through the snapshot and the AP services and the routine. let's see, the session is designed to expose participants, all of you attendants, to the basic tenets and principles of universal design for learning and differentiated instruction. Now, Dr. Dillon spoke briefly about this yesterday, and we felt like it was important enough that we continue with this aspect. So, and then later on, we'll identify less known inclusionary instructional strategies that are being used in physical education. I'm providing you with some additional resources. And at the very end, I'll do my very best to offer answers to questions that you might have. So I'm going to move us from some very basic uses of universal design. I'm going to then apply universal design for learning to differentiated instruction in the physical education and inclusive settings. And it's my hope that you can see that perhaps how UDL and differentiated instruction addresses teaching strategies in inclusionary settings for all students. Let's go to some examples. If I were to ask you about what do you think we mean by universal design, or do you have examples of universal design? And so I decided to share these things with you. Closed captioning, we have that for television. Text-to-speech features to read text out loud for people with limited vision. Speech recognition and features to control devices by voice for those with limited mobility. And then there's some of the more obvious ones that we particularly see and you probably have been exposed to, and those are curb cuts. Curb cuts to go from the street into a walkway and into some of your buildings. These are universal design. Automatic doors that open and close, ramps into buildings. So universal design, of course, addresses accessibility features. And they do so without any constraints. Anyone can use them. They're available to all. And they address, some of the basic needs that we need in life on a daily basis. But yet, universal design applied to the global aspects encompasses very much more. That's going to be my next slide. Okay, so you can see that this is a universal design for learning now. In this global aspect, you can see that this is a circle with 5 objects around it, and it really does inform the humanistic side of how I approach and perform my job as an adaptive PE specialist. These 5 components are arranged in a circle, and I'm going to start with wellness up here at the top. As a motor specialist at my campuses, I address the overall wellness of each of my students within their 3 domains of learning. And the 3 domains of learning, of course, are what we're all about and what today's focus is on, and that is the physical. All of the physical aspects that we need to consider for our students. The affective, and for today's presentation, I mean to include the social emotional learning aspects and even behavioral needs of our students. And then their cognitive or intellectual abilities. So our 3 domains of learning are the physical, cognitive, and affective domains. So when I think about this diagram and why I wanted to show it to you is that in what ways must my instruction differ for each of my students that I teach? And differentiated instruction is a topic of this presentation. And so this model, I think, certainly addresses, not necessarily addresses it, but provides some context in this aspect. Social integration, I'm going to start, I've already spoken about wellness, so now I'm going to go to social integration. I take an active role to assist in the integration of my students, sometimes in their home, assisting their parents. Their school, I go right into a physical education class to watch them, observe them, to take data. Those types of observations inform my assessment reports. I might follow them into a music therapy session to see how they perform and react to music. And then I may follow them and observe them, of course, out into the outside and recess and play. I look at them for their community needs by community-based activities and their sport competitions. I do all of these things by extending respect and dignity to them and their families. And for me, this is a large part of social integration. When I come down next to the personalization of this model, this really speaks to me. I must address the personal. We have to get to know our students. We have to know their personal needs, their interests, their likes and dislikes. And by doing so, it allows, of course, for choices, self-expression, and personal preferences. All of these things are key for me to be successful when trying to reach and teach my kids. The culturalization part of this requires me to recognize and respect the cultural values to connect with my students and their families. Ignoring this part of UDL removes the context and fabric of who some of my students might be or from where some of their decisions come from or ways in which they behave. And then the final piece, equity, inclusion, and social justice. I have a strong mindset to address equal opportunity for all. And I think that's a crux of what an adapted physical education specialist does. I'm challenged to remove barriers. And part of my charge is to offer possibilities for my students through my teaching. So within this global aspect of UDL, we can start to see some repetitive themes that surface: social inclusion, social integration, respect for the person, and justice and equality and equity for all. Each of these components are the foundation of the global aspects of universal design for learning. So now let's apply it to physical education. So this is an image of an adapted PE specialist who's speaking to you today with a student with a visual impairment. And this is in his inclusionary physical education class. And the goal of this lesson by the PE teacher was to jump a rope. When I arrived, his vision teacher was there, and she waved me over to talk to her, and she said, you know, he's really frustrated, he's really upset. And I said, oh, what's going on? And come down to the bolts of what was going on was he was trying his best to jump with a jump rope that was nylon, thin, plastic, and was having very little success. His best field of vision is above his head and higher. And so, of course, you know, jumping a rope, you have to throw it and we'll have it come down in his lower field of vision range or register. And so, but I chose this example for UDL blending in with differentiated instruction because every student received the same piece of equipment, the nylon plastic jump rope. And that's that part of UDL where everybody's treated the same, everybody's equal, and now here's the task, and we are going to try to see how successful we can be. And at this point, of course, the task was to jump. I asked, knowing that he was frustrated, I asked the general PE teacher, I said, do you guys have any noodles? Well, you can see that the answer was yes. And so I went to the student and I said, what is your favorite color? Or, you know, what color do you see the best with? And he knew, and he said, either pink or red. And I said, based upon that color against a lighter floor, he said, yes. I said, okay. So we got the noodle, we put the jump rope through the noodle, and so the equipment was changed. That's part of differentiated instruction. And then it was very clear to me that he wasn't going to jump a rope a traditional way, but he will jump a rope. I said, let's try it this way. Let's make that bell swing back and forth. Now the task has been differentiated. Rather than jump the rope in a circular pattern, he began to jump the rope in a bell pattern, and he went back and forth in a variety of different ways. And so he, for the very first time, jumped rope alongside his peers and was delighted and tickled. And in fact, ran to the general PE teacher and said, "Hey, I did it. I jumped the rope." And so he was so excited. He went home to his mom and he told his mother of his success. And his mother called me and she asked for recommendations of a type of jump rope for him. And so I use this example of combining universal design for learning. Everybody has the same pieces of equipment, which is kind of one of the posits for universal design. And then, but we had to differentiate the way he did it, the way he could perform it, and we found success. This is one of the reasons why I love the challenges that I'm faced with and the successes that we can have. And just putting our heads together and finding success for kids. I'm going to show you now an image of a textbook, very popular and relatively new, Universal Design for Learning and Physical Education. These are United States authors, and it is certainly driving our profession right now. Universal Design for Learning and Physical Education. It's been around for a while, but it is very strong right now in all that we're doing. And so I just share this resource with you. I know when I was I like to have my books and my resources in my library. I try to stay up on some of the latest things and continue to build that library, though I will admit, I know that these books are expensive, and they're particularly expensive when you try to obtain them from India. So Shri Padmini and I have had a conversation about that. I don't know if there's anything that we can do to try to assist or help, but I did at least want to expose you to that textbook. Let's go ahead and continue though. There's three principles of UDL, and I'm just going to summarize this slide for us. If we have a teacher, a parent, or a therapist here, I think these things are doable for all of us. The three principles are engagement, representation, and action and expression. And then I tried to provide some examples over here on this side as a physical education or adapted physical education teacher as to what you could do to try to meet these things and address them. And it's now in the United States, it's highly discouraged. It's not acceptable, in fact, to simply throw out equipment in any type of physical education setting and simply say, here, have some fun. Now, that's not to say that we don't have some physical education teachers who do that, but nonetheless, there's tremendous sharing of information now that physical education is an admirable and respected career field, and that aspect of not planning to meet kids' needs is really very much frowned upon. So UDL instruction in physical education, or just instruction and education in general, is going to require a lot of upfront planning by the teacher. The instruction is to focus on the needs of all of the students, not only those from a single disability group. And that's why I thought it was important to share the example first of our student with visual impairment, as he found himself in the physical education class receiving all the same equipment, but what we needed to do for him was differentiated instruction so that he could be successful. Let's talk a little bit more though about engagement, the why of learning. Engagement, that the very first principle, it's what are you going to do? How do we make it interesting by what we do? How do we motivate them? How do we get them excited? And when I say them, I'm meaning our students or our children in our family, or if you're a therapist, the people that you're working with. How do you challenge them? How do you get them hooked? And we do that by, on the example side, we vary the equipment. You heard me earlier talk about novel pieces of equipment to increase interest, perhaps increase opportunity. Instant activities to get them moving. Yes, I've already mentioned that. Offer choices, visual. We use music and, in different ways to get kids going. And games and rules can be modified to address the various multiple abilities. And in the visuals too, I want to make sure that right now, because of COVID and because of all these different things that are unfolding, our kids are not able to go to the gym, and because we can't expose one group of kids to the other. So we have a lot of teachers who are utilizing online visuals and dances and things to use in the classroom. If you're not familiar with Go Noodle, that might be something that you would potentially want to tap into if you can get it in the States. I'm sorry, in India. I don't know the capability of the system of Go Noodle itself, and if it's made accessible to all of you. But we do use a lot of video footage and online teaching. Gosh darn it. We've really, with COVID, gone after online physical demonstrations of skill. We've sent those to our parents, and all of those things that we're doing. Now I'm talking about principle number 2, representation. What do we have to do for our students? What do they need to, how are they going to see something? How are they going to hear something? How might they read what we're presenting to them? What instructional formats do the students need for support and accessibility to learn? So here's where you can use text, those audio things. There's some overlap and things that are going on here between the principles, but we have to recognize student differences, and those student differences, of course, require varied teaching strategies. Action and expression, and then the principle 3 of the examples. These are kind of the nuts and bolts too of what we do as a physical educator, adaptive physical education specialist. It's about how kids perform, how they respond, how they perhaps might organize things to best satisfy their learning outcomes, goals, and standards. And so as teachers or parents or therapists, we have to find ways to assess that. Assess those goal-directed objectives, and we can do that through physical and individual group demonstrations, using those models of video and or videotape aspects. I do a lot of video modeling and a lot of videoing my kids so that they can see themselves perform. And then that is what just starts to really make it real for them. And they can say, oh, look, I did that. Or you can see by them watching that they're taking that in. They have an idea of what they look like with their movement. And most of my kids really enjoy that. We do different things. You can draw the body, you can draw the movements. We can certainly do the old-fashioned way of testing by paper. You can have a student provide you with answers like I do when we out the door. I question my kids on what did we do today and what did you like, so they can give audio replies. But we have to notice and recognize across the board with any of the principles how kids' abilities differ, the differentiation that we need to be ready to look at, examine, and then plan accordingly for the students to best, so that we can best meet their needs. I offer this slide. It's one of the few things that I put in here for research aspects of universal design and learning and differentiated instruction. It's relatively new in its publication date, 2019. Lieberman, Grenier, and then von Munster. You really hear Lieberman and Grenier really strongly associated with universal design and learning. They were the authors of that first book that I shared with all of you. And so this is a 3-pronged model with directional arrows. It's about the instructional approaches of physical education accommodating for students with disabilities in elementary PE classes. It was a United States study. And they reported three main approaches that the general PE teachers most commonly used. The very first one was normalized instruction. So that's just using your traditional curriculum with little to no effort to address student with disability needs, to accommodate for them, to modify for them, those types of things. And then the second was differentiated instruction. They were able to, during the research aspect of observing teachers doing their jobs, adaptations and tailored specifically the needs of each student with disabilities. And then they did also see universal design for instruction and based upon the UDL principles and accessibility to all students. Differentiated instruction and what was the most prevalent instructional format that was used, the physical education lessons based on UDL principles with a combination of differentiated instruction, provided significant resources for students with disabilities in physical education. And the teachers developed lessons that covered a broad range of abilities, skill levels, and they allowed for a multitude of student learning objectives and goals to be addressed. Teachers also noted that friendships were made and students with disabilities were viewed as valuable classmates. So that's one of the most recent studies applicable to physical education inclusionary settings using differentiated instruction and universal design for learning in physical education. Differentiated instruction has four components. Dr. Dillon mentioned these briefly, and I think that when we look at how we plan our lessons, the content is, of course, what is it that we want the students to learn? The process is, how are the students going to acquire the information? The product, how the students demonstrate their learning, and then the learning environment and where and with whom the students learn. So you're starting to hear some repetition of these aspects. Some of these terms are familiar, similar, and you should recognize that they've been used throughout the presentation today. I wanted to bring up some other ways that my physical education colleagues also modify and adapt or make their sessions inclusive for students. And so I'm going to just touch briefly on these. You're seeing a image of myself with a student learning those aspects of how to catch a ball with their hands raised. And this would be an example before before I toss the ball to a student for them to catch. I want to make sure that they stay safe. So this would be an intra-task variation. I cannot just stand back and toss the student a ball because I don't know if they have a ready position. I don't know if they can respond quick enough to get their hands in the place where it needs to go or where that ball may end up traveling to, depending on what kind of toss I make. And so a way to do the task variation is for the teacher to control the object. And I do that with a soccer ball. It's a netted soccer trainer. It has a handle, and I can toss it up high, I can toss it down low. And so we start to see those hand positions from the example that I used earlier. So, that's an aspect of task variation based upon the picture that you see in the slide. Teaching by imitation, I really try to work very hard to allow my students to make choices and to own those choices, and then how they can then engage and participate. And so that is letting them teach by imitation. They're watching, you know that you have some visual learners, usually in your physical education class. They're going to watch their peers, and then they're going to attempt, and they're going to watch and imitate what you do. So it's called teaching by imitation, based upon the student imitating what the teacher is doing or what their peers are doing. And then we have one that I think is commonly used, and it's called the STEP model. And this is, you can see how we break it down. We take a look at the space of where the activity is being performed. We take a look at, of course, the task or the skill that is being taught or instructed. Pardon me. We take a look at time to accomplish the task. How much time are you going to give the student to do that? Or are you going to put a time limit on the student? And then what equipment is being used? And in what ways can we alter or change that equipment? What is needed? And finally, the people involved in the activity is what kind of students do you want to pair? Do you want students to work independently? Or how do you want to handle that within your lesson? So this is called the STEP model. And I have a variety of general PE teachers who will actually talk to me about, I'm using STEP. Here are my thoughts about my plans to include this student with a disability. It really doesn't matter what the disability is, other than being more specific. I can help them with the specifics of things. But when they're wanting to make their lesson plans and think totally for their students in their class, we will talk in these terms quite frequently. I wanted to give you this image and show this to you. Trying to apply it a little bit further, UDL and differentiated instruction in a sport application. So this is an image of a gym with a variety of equipment. They're attempting to play a game of indoor baseball, softball, whatever you'd like to call that. And everybody has basically the same type of single bat or equipment that they used. They can either have the ball, in this situation, the ball was pitched, and then everybody was to receive 2 pitches. And if the student missed the pitch, then the student got to hit the ball off of the tee. We changed the activity just a little bit. You can see this player is holding the ball in her hand, and that was how we invited or included differentiated instruction for this student. We still then allowed her to throw the ball out, and the other players out in the field reacted to where the ball went, and we played that game in the gym, and everybody was able to be engaged. And you can see there's a variety of equipment there that's also there, and we have assistants helping. All of these things are ways in which to make sure that our students are, or those players are engaged to the best ability that they possibly can in this scenario. I've provided you with UDL and physical education resources, and so there's some videos that links that I've provided for you. And then the Lieberman-Bryan inclusive rating scale. Those authors are still presenting this. In fact, I think they're presenting the scale tomorrow to a group of adapted PE specialists in Texas. And then I provided you with the CAST organization, which provides us with information about universal design for learning. So I wanted you to have, if you wanted to tap into those resources, you could, those internet links. Now I'm just going to take you through some of the things that you see. We're going to talk about, I need to move some things here so I can. So when we think about universal design and applying the principles to these pictures, means of engagement, do you think we have hooked these students. This is part of why we teach. Why we teach. The image is a parachute activity of inclusion PE with a class, and that's called Stella the Starfish. So this activity, why we teach this is that we want to try to get them hooked. We use the novelty and spontaneity and the excitement and motivation of the young learners, and we have an appropriate adult to student assistance to increase success. And so this was a small physical education class, inclusionary, and this was just one part of the lesson that I assisted with, and they had other aspects that was going on as well in the other part of the gym. So those students could rotate. This as a means of engagement, and this is an inclusionary physical education class, a winter snowball throwing activity. And I show it because students with disabilities are throughout the class. There's a great amount of equipment that the students can pick from, and the strategies are to motivate, challenge, and try to excite all of the students. You can see by the amount of activity that's going on that these groups of students really enjoyed this activity. Now, this group of girls right here, they're making a choice to hide behind what is a fort to stay safe from the snowballs that are being thrown. And what you can't see, because it's not a video, is that eventually they came out and got very involved and also enjoyed the activity. The nice thing about putting up the forts is that if we do have our students with disabilities who need to take a rest, who need to slow down, or maybe they just want to connect with one of their peers, it offers them a safe place to go as well, and perhaps to try to strike up a friendship. So I just wanted to be able to share that with you. The peers and staff are there to support and assist as needed. Drumming right now is very big right now. This is Drums Alive, and there's other names for it. So this is a class, a physical education, elementary physical education class, and they're excited and challenged because of the unique equipment that they're able to have. You'll also see needs met by projecting video image and visuals up on the wall, and they are the ones that will be creating the music. All of the students, every one of the students have the drum or the ball, a drum bass, and the sticks. So universal design is very much described here or demonstrated. And we have students who are deaf up in the front of the class. There's a student right here that I'll tell you is a student who's deaf because I can see his hearing aids. Here's one of his colleagues. So those students are strategically placed up in front, and the sign language interpreter is over here, and she is interpreting for the entire class while the deaf students are facing and watching. So, you know, universal design, everybody has equipment and needs are being met as an interpreter is there for those students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Means of representation. This is what we provide to our students in a variety of equipment, which you can, I wanted to display that aspect here. Means of representation by, if we don't have a variety of objects to throw, such as the balls here, then make your own balls. Make paper balls. Make balls out of tissue, out of newspaper. Right now we have, you know, budgets are at a crunch, or our students who are at home for COVID. I often have parents who I'll ask, what equipment do you have at home? Well, we don't have any equipment at home. You don't have a ball? No, we don't have a ball. So we either have to provide the equipment for the student, or I'll simply tell the parent, you know, you could make paper balls. And the act of bringing the hands together to create a paper ball, that bringing things to the midline, the fine dexterity and strength in the hands that need to occur and have their A lot of parents are very thankful to have that. I have therapists, particularly OTs, and some physical therapists who use this activity to have their students make a paper ball. And then I've used them in a variety of ways. You can throw, kick, catch. The student can do it relatively easily, and you get hit by a paper ball. Hopefully it won't hurt too bad. So there's a lot of safety involved with it. This image over here, again, means of representation, my deaf students. This in American Sign Language says baseball, softball. And if you can see all of the things that are there, here's a field diagram. Here is in American Sign Language, we're saying baseball. And then the field, softball and baseball field. So when I work with some of my deaf kids, deaf students, I bring these posters with me. I have 4 others. I have soccer, volleyball, football, and basketball. And I'll put those out based upon what it is that perhaps we're working on. And usually I use these usually for upper elementary physical education content. To reiterate, some of those aspects and content that they're working on, but I wanted to show this to you as a means of representation. What do we need to prepare for our students to help them learn the content that they should be learning in their physical education curriculum? The student down here is a student with autism. She was particularly having a bad day. She had a striking goal with a bat. And she just was not in it that day. She was not going to have anything to do with it. So I had my iPad with me, and we found this online game, and we had a great time. We reiterated a lot of different concepts and skills that she could visually point out and say. Eventually, we moved away from the screen, and she performed some of those. And we are actually in the campus library doing that activity. We identified that as a great success for her because she was in a situation on that particular day where she was shutting down. She didn't want to do anything. So bringing this iPad in, it was just her cup of tea, and we were still able to reiterate skills, and she could watch some form, and eventually backed away and actually did perform herself. So all of these things, then I'm going to talk about these 2 right here. Of course, behavior happens. It doesn't matter if you have the best, newest, latest equipment, the best laid plan for a lesson. If we cannot control the student's behavior, all of that's for naught. So, and there's times when I could have provided a variety of different visuals on this. This is a student's daily schedule that they follow. You can see the icons down here, or the pictures that they would use to identify that they were done. And then we also have another version of that, of the pictures that we want them to perform, and then whether or not they've been completed and moved in the places where they need to be placed, showing completion. Excuse me. This is a student with autism, and he had a kicking goal. I used a variety of different pieces of equipment and not just a round playground ball. And so on a particular day, we brought these in, and he picked out all of these and used them in a variety of different ways. And I was very happy with what he showed me. The 2 different little balls, footballs right here that are stackable, he could put those one on top of the other. And I should have included a picture for you to show you his kicking motion, but he kicked and kicked and kicked. And I challenged him to also kick with his other leg so that we could work on opposition step and kicking with each leg, so that it was a balanced aspect for him, and he just had a wonderful time. So variety of equipment, different ways to still work on something, even if you don't have the desired equipment or the equipment that you hope for, and then ways in which we represent content, skills, vocabulary, and the different ways that we do communicate that, whether it's verbally or in sign language, and then, of course, using technology and just the nuts and bolts of working with kids behaviorally and some of the things that we have to do. So I wanted to just provide you with a variety of pictures there as means of representation. Kind of keeping with that same theme, because of COVID in the spring, we were teaching from home, and so we did spend a lot of time reaching out to our families. So here is, I have a little space in my house. I'm online with one of my deaf students, a young one, pre-K student, so he's not yet in elementary. The parents are there. They have a small apartment, and the goal was to work on kicking. So I am actually signing to him about what we're going to do that day. And I just simply, and you can see some of the things on the floor. We were also going to work on catching and some striking. So I was prepared, had my session online or remotely or virtually, however you want to say that. And the session went off very well. So means of representation, how do we reach our students? Again, showing you a variety of equipment. And here as well. And then these are, I just had some fun with ways of making different types of striking objects. The two little bitty shoes here are little girl tennis shoes. And the idea of putting a golf club into a shoe and then using expanding foam so that it hardens came about because one of my little kiddos who uses a wheelchair, this little girl was a student in a wheelchair, we were working on kicking. And every time that she kicked, her two legs would go out in front of her and she would go into extension. So I thought, well, she can kick in other ways. We can strike in other ways. So I made these little shoes for her, these golf clubs, and she could put it off to the side or in front of her where the ball was placed, and she could swing the shoe to hit the ball, and that became her kick. Means of action and expression, we know too that we should challenge our students to be able to respond by paper. So you have an example of that. He is actually noting running trials, completed running laps, and he was quite happy with his results. But he himself, after he had been done running and had cooled down, was taking track of counting his number of completed laps. This is a student who, means of action and expression, he had been getting ready for a local track meet against some of his other kids from other high schools. And so he was running his race. And he is being supported by his partner from his partner PE class. And so he had worked and worked and worked. So this is not only for self-propelling, but also for endurance, for fitness, and then he got to compete. So means of action and expression, doing these types of things, we can certainly gain a lot of different types of data on our students. Down here, we have a student with autism, and we're placing him in between two other students that are serving as models to help him get into position. So we've got one student that's ready and set. We're still waiting on this student to get into place. And this student is kind of behind the mark here just a little bit, but he, when we put those students alongside each other with the student that needs some support or help, he was able to get into position, and he did quite nicely. Means of action and expression through community-based activities and sport. Again, some of my opening remarks, I commented on the beautiful montage of video footage of sharing of the community-based activities and sport that you have going on there in India. And so I applaud you all for doing that. Here's just some examples in and around the North Texas area, and particularly in our district. Wrote a grant for taking kids bowling, and that village, it does take a village sometimes to help students to be successful, but we had the instruction, we received grant monies, and equipment. We practiced in the gym, in their, not only their physical education classes, but we also practiced if need be in their classrooms. And then we brought them out to the community. And this student is being supported very much by the adults that came along. So you have a classroom teacher there and another adapted PE teacher who is assisting this student to be successful to bowl. This young man I just worked with today, in fact, and he's getting some assistance from another gentleman that we contacted in the community, who is an athlete who uses a wheelchair in a variety of different ways, and he competes in wheelchair basketball and different wheelchair sports. So we connected these two together, took them to a local park in Denton, and this young student is getting instruction and a little bit of role modeling and a little bit of, a friendship was made there. And to this day, he remembers this man who helped him. And on occasion, they'll get back together. But it's happening less and less because this young man is getting older. And so he's not quite as interested in basketball as I'd like. I'd like to see him go into disability sport. And I was talking to him about that today. So we're going to try to get him motivated and excited for some track events, wheelchair track events. And I think he's on board. This is a group of Special Olympians celebrating, if you will, and hanging out at one of their track meets. And then these two down here are some young athletes doing the best they can in a walk event and a track and field event in North Texas. And I wanted you to see that. So, we can gain a lot of data, we can gain a lot of information, but more importantly, think about all that went with these students to get them to this point. And both were thrilled to be able to be out there on that track and to be able to compete. Some more community-based activities. These are in our school district. This is a creative movement group, moving to music. We have to be careful with our music that we select for a variety of different reasons, whether or not the student can tolerate it, the sound, or what the focus is of what it is we're going to be combining it with, who the students are, and how long of a session we can have. So, but the great time was had with this. They really enjoyed it, and they eventually went on to a community event and danced on a stage in late April. This is we host a fishing, for years and years and years now. We won a grant to teach kids how to fish and everything that goes along with it. And so we've been doing that now since 2007. And because of COVID, just this year, we had to cancel that. This is the first time ever that we've canceled the fishing events, and it was pretty devastating. So some of our kids and our campuses, and even our teachers and our administrators, we hope to, of course, bring that back as soon as we can. But now, besides the fishing, we have a whole array of other service providers that come out. This is some of our music therapists that come out, and this is a drum circle. And so the kids really enjoy that. We also offer them with some yard games that they can play, very basic games that that they can play with their families. We also have our OTs come along, and they might do a variety of different OT-based activities for kids who need, some more work on their fine motor skills and other ways, and their daily living skills to take care of themselves. This day, we have some administrators who tell us that this is one of their favorite days of the school year. And so, like I said, because of COVID, it has been canceled, but we certainly hope that it can be resumed. So I wanted you to see these. These are other ways that we actually come out and take data on our kids. We take a look at what they're showing us throughout their 3 domains of learning. And on top of that, we all get to have a really great time. I'm a very big believer in collaboration, and that it does take a very large village at times. This is an image of, in the last 3 years, we've had some of our service organizations just say, hey, we would like to give you guys some money, and you can use it however you'd like to. And so we started taking some of our kids who were self-contained, who perhaps didn't always have the same opportunities to go into a physical education class, or maybe, but you just give them a different opportunity. And we have a large auditorium in Denton, and this pool is, of course, heated water there, so the water's quite warm and comfortable. But what you see here is a group of adults supporting our little ones who come from our pre-K deaf education class. So I am here, and this is a parachute in the water, and our kids are navigating back and forth across the parachute. And some of the ways in which they move really start to emulate that of the American crawl or a traditional swimming type of pattern. But what's interesting is that we have university-based students from the Department of Communication who are learning how to sign. They came, they did pre-teaching experiences in the classroom, and then came for 3 consecutive Fridays to help get the kids into the pool. So it gave them a great hands-on experience in that regard, some clinical hours. But we also have a the visual VI teacher. We have our orientation and mobility person who's here. We have our speech and language individual professional that's here. And I just kind of say to people, if you want to come and assist, that would be great, because sometimes we have kids who need to have not only one-to-one matches, but maybe more than one-to-one matches because of perhaps the fear that they have of going into the water. Excuse me. So it does, all the things that we do, all the ways that we try to reach our kids. I wanted to mention, I can't do my job. I can't reach my kids. I'm not an effective teacher as I'd like to be without gathering my village. And so I'm very happy with the ways in which we reach out to these folks. I utilize them as need be. And this is not a complete group. So when you go out to, if you go into your physical education classes and you see people that you might think might need some help, you can always make recommendations to, have you thought about speaking with this person? Have you thought about speaking with that person? To try to reach out and get more communicated efforts. And it's all about helping the kids be successful. And I'm going to mention this too. Again, you heard me speaking about COVID already. We cannot overlook the importance and value of connecting with our parents, especially now during COVID. I think as an adapted PE group, we take great pride in the ways in which we try to connect with our parents, the ways in which we connect with our classroom teachers, our general PE teachers, and all of our other specialists. We work very hard on that in Denton Independent School District. I think that we are very fortunate to have the support that we do have. We have some very dedicated people in the district, and it's been quite an honor for me to be in that district for as many years as I have. I've been in the district now for 16 years. I'll retire in a few years. These are just the presentation resources.
Dr. Linda, you've muted yourself. Dr. Linda, you have muted yourself, so we can't hear you. Dr. Linda, we can't hear you. No, we cannot hear you. You're still muted.
Unmute now.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I apologize about that.
Is this? Are you at the end of your presentation now?
Pretty much, yes. Yes, ma'am.
All right, because I have some questions for you, and as soon as you finish the lecture part, I'm going to be able to ask you the questions from
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just show you just a few more resources. When I was developing this presentation, I'm sharing these resources with you because all of these are valuable to have as far as further models for to consider when we want to try to be inclusionary practices. So I share those with you. Just look into those. If you're aware of them, that's wonderful. If not, there might be something that you could take from that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, of course, we have to recognize Special Olympics is probably the world premier group that incorporate words of inclusivity, being unified, and inclusion. And so I have to mention that. I didn't know if perhaps you know, but they do celebrate a national day or International Day of Yoga, and with a specific date in June. So I wanted to make sure that all of you knew that, if you didn't have that information. And the last things on my slides are textbooks that you might be interested in. The first two were international perspectives, so I wanted to share that with the audience. And then the last three are based out of the United States, and I share that with you in case you want to further build your library. And I will just simply say, I want to thank you for all of your efforts to improve physical education for all students. And with that, I think I will open it up to any questions that hopefully I can try to answer. Do I need to stop sharing?
Sorry, you can stay just as you are.
Okay.
Let me just take a moment, and I'm trying to. So, Dr. Satyamurthy, can I go ahead and start asking the questions? Dr. Linda, you can stop sharing your screen, and I will go ahead and start asking you the questions that we've received from the attendees. Okay. All right. That was a really elaborate, informative session. I believe we've had the opportunity to look in depth about what happens on a day-to-day basis in an adapted PE setup in the United States, and that is very exciting. To sort of summarize what you've said within to the Indian context, some of the key points that I was able to put together for us were the points where you mentioned about right to accessing gymnasiums and ensuring that right for our students with disabilities. That is something that we as PE teachers and professionals are still trying to build our voices around, ensuring that access to facilities and infrastructure. Then we really do appreciate your mention of humanistic approach to teaching. Then ensuring communication skills for the students with disabilities within a PE setting, like teaching them that communication skill aspect. So that is something that has stood out for me. And speaking about differentiated instruction and universal design of learning within the same space, I think has given the attendees a newer lens onto the term of inclusion. The term of inclusion is used so much, but oftentimes we are not getting to know what are the new things that are evolving under the concept of inclusion. So that point is very much appreciated. I think for me, as also a person who's from India, what you've mentioned with the STEP model is something that a good percentage of the attendees from here are able to immediately take with them into their classrooms or practice. So that is very practical, easily applicable, and does not require a lot of changes to the existing lesson planning. It could just be blending those principles in. So with these points, then we've had some questions come in where one of the student was talking about potentially future sessions where we could be doing Zoom activity sessions is something that they have expressed their interest on. Then the next question is, a non-verbal autistic child with self-harming or harming behaviors. And if you as a PE teacher is handling such a student in a setup, what would your tips to that PE teacher be on what could be some of the preliminary tips to control or handle that situation?
Right, yes. And I have worked with students like that, whether they are self-injurious to themselves and or acting out and then injurious to others. So yes, I have worked with those kids. I've been slapped, kicked, bit, that type of thing. And so here's my thought about these things. Remember, those acting out aspects is a way of communication. That student is communicating, something that's going on with him. And so we need to take a look at what happened perhaps before the behavior. Was there something that occurred? Was there if you walked into a gym and there was too much noise, then did the biting and the behavior start to happen? Or is physical education a preferred activity for the student? And as you walk towards the activity or to the gym or wherever the activity is going to be held, perhaps the student starts to act out or even run or start to hit themselves. So first and foremost too, though, you need, so recognize that the acting out behaviors is communication. Next, we want to keep the student safe. And you have to be very careful about how you might do that. But remember, we want kids to participate in physical education in the safe and secure manner. We want to keep them safe and secure. So if the student's acting out, you may have to go in and physically try to stop the acting out behavior, just take a look at what has perhaps happened. But you also have to keep yourself safe as well.
So have you ever gotten to the point of physically restraining them to sort of come?
Yes,
space?
Yes. And we have specific training that we must complete and take an exam to be able to do that. And we take those things very seriously. We do not just, oh, he's having a bad day, let's put him down on the ground, or, the student down on the ground. No, there has to be particular steps that are followed, a team of people who have been trained in knowing how to restrain a person and potentially take them down to the floor, or the people that have to be able to do that. And so that's taken very seriously. We don't take those things let's just do it. Those types of decisions are tough decisions.
Okay. And I'm really sorry. I just have to do something here. I have to bear with me just one moment. Trying to find somebody that I would have to unmute here, because I've been given the admin privileges here, and I think I'm not able to find that person here. Where is Dr. Giridharan? Dr. Giridharan, I'm not able to find Dr. Satyamurthy's account here. Under what name is he in?
RKMVERI, Gappy.
Oh, okay. It's a Gappy account. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I really apologize, Dr. Satyamurthy. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Emma. You can carry on.
Yeah. So the next question, Dr. Linda, is could you give us examples of some assessments that we commonly use in student placement? Initially when we want to place a student in APE services, any common popular assessments that have been used across the group, some popular tools that you could mention?
Yes, well, I know tomorrow you, Shri Padmini, are speaking about the legal aspects of adaptive physical education there in India. We too have, of course, our legal guidelines that we have to follow. But to answer your question about assessment tools, part of our laws say that they must be standardized and formal standardized assessments. And then also supported by informal gathering of information and assessment. And so tools that I would recommend right now, there are very few who are standardized, but I would recommend the test of gross motor development. It's in its 3rd edition. and it is for students ages 3 through 10. And it parallels a traditional physical education curriculum in locomotor skills and object control skills.
Okay.
So I would suggest that one. For secondary kiddos, as far as a standardized tool, I would suggest either the Brockport or Fitnessgram. Those are ways to collect data. Of course, it's targeting fitness-based things, so not very much physical education curriculum, if you will, but it is still a standardized tool. Those both are still standardized tools, and they look at fitness of the student. Curriculum-based models are a little bit more difficult to come by as far as being standardized or formal. But in Texas, we do use the C-tape, and that's the competency test of adapted physical education. There are 6 levels to it, based upon the student's age, and each level gets more difficult. We do use it. We say that we can use it because it's used throughout the state of Texas, and it's becoming more and more popular and being used in other places of the United States. So though it may not be a standardized tool, it could be recognized as a valuable tool because many people are using it, and we're getting some very similar results. And more so importantly, we're learning about curriculum-based aspects in locomotor skill, object control skill, fitness, gymnastics, a variety of different things that would complement a physical education curriculum.
So I think the follow-up question to this was, what is the usual time frame within which a student is re-evaluated to either be continued or dropped from APE services? I believe that is also coming under what the regulations are. Would that be the response to it? What is the time frame before which you re-evaluate a child to be
correct? Yes, in the United States, we say that a child must be re-evaluated every 3 years. At least. That's a minimum.
Okay.
Now, there's always the caveat. We might have a reason to evaluate sooner.
Okay.
And so if the IEP committee agrees, then we can evaluate that student sooner than the required 3-year reevaluation date. Now, if it's a new evaluation, then our committee establishes the timelines, the legal timelines, so that all those people who are assessing are on the same page. So there's differences there.
Okay, I just have 2 more questions here, and then I'm going to let you go. I know it's really late for you. Is there a particular reason why most of the images you have shared have been inside closed environments? I know you did mention at the beginning that you are using best of what you have available, but one of the attendees had a question where they said, is it because you're trying to avoid distraction? Is that a consideration when you are working with children with special needs? Is it a part of your plan, to keep them within closed spaces as much as possible? Is that even a factor?
Absolutely, it can be a factor. And I tried to kind of briefly talk about that. I don't mind teaching in a confined space because it can help if I have even a small group and everybody's kicking, as an example, everybody's kicking a soccer ball. I want to work efficiently as possible in controlling that environment and controlling my kids, allowing them to have as many repetitions as possible. If they're running all over and I'm trying to see what so-and-so is doing over here and another child's doing over here, it's very hard for me to observe and evaluate a kid's performance and gain any type of data. So and just for instance, the hallways that I work in, if we kick or if I use a balloon and it comes off the wall, it's very easy to control. I can, and so yes, I'm hoping I understand the true essence of the question, but for the pictures that you saw with me teaching my kids, yes, I do. And another reason I teach in hallways is because our gym that I would have to perhaps take them to, or the cafeteria, or, you know, an open space, is the farthest distance from the student's classroom. And by the time I take to pick up the student and go move them to that area to work with them, look at the time that I've wasted, that I've lost. And if the student has a behavior issue, now I'm somewhere way different in the campus, and I perhaps cannot ask for help and assistance. So I want to work as efficiently and proficiently as I can, and sometimes doing that right next to that student's classroom works as the best environment to do that.
So you can get the help from the paraeducator or the teacher who is much more comfortable handling their behaviors.
That's right. That's right. Or if I need help, I just say, I pop my head into the classroom and say, could you guys come, please? So-and-so is on the floor. And, you know, he's kicking and screaming, you know, and tag, you're it.
All right. Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much for your patience and answering all the questions, especially most of the content you have shared. If there's one final take home you want to give us as Indians from all your presentation isn't to apply this to our Indian context. I think we are where United States was a couple of decades ago. So what would be, because you've seen America get so much better with each passing day for students with disabilities. So my question is, for the Indian context, what would be your take home? Yeah, there are strategies that experts like you are sharing with us, but what would your one take home message be to all the attendees if they want to get out there and start working with children with disabilities in school settings? What would your one take home for them be? Don't
be afraid. Take risks. Don't be, you know, the kids that you're going to be working with, that you are to be the motor specialist at your campus or with your kids.
Great answer, ma'am. Take risk. I love you. Take risk.
Yeah. So don't, and you know, if we don't take risks, and if we don't show our students that we're willing to take risks,
I give 500% for that. 500%.
Dr. Satyamurthy is a physical therapist, so he completely is connected with the concept instantly. The moment
I have only one question from my side.
Yeah, I'll hand it over to Dr. Satyamurthy so that he can conclude the session. Thank you, Dr. Linda.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Linda, ma'am, dear ma'am. So your final question, ma'am, do you have a physical therapist in your setup?
Do I have a physical therapist?
Maybe a sports physiotherapist.
Oh, in the district?
In your Texas University or in your concern?
Yes.
So what's your idea about kinesio taping? Does kinesio taping? We used to practice for behavioral problem and functional problems. We used to tape them. It gives a good result, but it is practiced there. Can you give some suggestions?
The taping that we see are basically identified for our athletes to help them recover from injuries. But this is what I'll say about taping, and maybe I'm reaching a little bit here, I don't know. But, you know, I could see benefit for many students with disabilities to have that. Sometimes we have kids who need that pressure.
Sure.
That can be applied by the taping that you do. You know, we just have to be very careful not to get it too tight, because then that could escalate the student in a different way. So I could see the taping being used in a variety of ways to not only calm the student, but perhaps if need be to, and then maybe excite the student. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, ma'am.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the answers and patience. Dear participants, I'm registered that it's midday for us, but it's midnight for the speaker. So we are very, very happy to thank them. To have an end note, I request Dr. Gizaran sir to kindly present end note.
Thank you, Dr. Satyamurthy. Really, madam, to begin with, giving a time to the participants, it is a big thing. And really, it's in the mid time. You took time for us, and with that we learned that we should not be afraid and we should take risk with all your deliberation of this today's session, will definitely would have been generated our audience fresh ideas and more thoughts and a solution to their challenges which they have faced with any task when what they are engaged. The students have been engaged in the field of adapted physical activities. So I take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to respected Dr. Linda Helen Brink. Madam, your session of this day 2 was very informative, and we are extremely grateful to you, Madam, for your insightful session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. And may tomorrow's session go well, or whoever is presenting. I don't know if it's just Shri Padmini or if it's others, but it's been my pleasure and my honor, and many blessings to everybody. Thank you so much.
Padmini madam,
Yeah.
madam.
Yes, sir.
You are requested to give the conclusion note, please.
Okay, so I think I mixed up the messages, the questions and the concluding messages. I remember mentioning some of the things that have stood out for us as Indians here. Dr. Linda, I can only tell you this much is what I'm reading from the attendees and what we have seen happen in the last 1.5 hours. I do see that Indian attendees are able to connect with you as a speaker and as a teacher. And that is a very encouraging thing for me to have noted. So I sincerely thank you. And I really appreciate you being patient and also taking time beyond your commitment. We only told you it was about an hour, but you did stick with us for about 2 hours plus. And we really thank you for that from the bottom of our heart. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. You know, there was a moment of the presentation for myself that I felt it was a little dry. I think a good thing whenever you present is that you can self-critique. And so I apologize for any of the dryness. And if it was in sign language, this means boring. So I'm sorry if I was boring at all. But it's been my honor and my pleasure to be a part of this today. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Dear ma'am, dear sir, and dear Padmini madam, dear Linda ma'am, I officially conclude today's session. Hope there is a take-home messages for everybody. We are happy to have you. Hope that is good morning for you there now.
It's already good morning.
So it's good afternoon here and good morning there. So it's very fruitful session, madam. I, on behalf of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Institute and faculty of our sports faculty, I officially thank you and end this session, madam. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, participants. And thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you. Dear sir, Giridharan sir, can I conclude it?
Yes, you can proceed.
Okay, madam. Dear participant, thank you. You all can come inside tomorrow morning at same time. That is 9:30. We will share you the link. That is the final day session, followed by the feedback link. Feedback link will be shared you shortly. That it is very important for you to fill it up. We will give you the procedures also. Please feel free to ask questions in tomorrow's sessions also. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. And we end the sessions today. See you tomorrow. Bye, dear participants. From Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda Education Institute, faculty of GAPI, Coimbatore campus, Tamil Nadu, India. See you tomorrow. Until then, it's bye-bye. Thank you so much.